Hello and welcome to the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh's weekly webinar on the COVID-19 series. And tonight we're addressing assessment and examinations internationally. And I'm delighted that we have our International Vice President, Mr. Pala Rajesh, who is chairing this session. My name's Michael Griffin. I'm Professor Michael Griffin. I'm President of the College, and it's my pleasure just to update you on what is happening in the College at the moment and what our plans for the future are. We are pleased to say that by the first week in September, the College and the infrastructure will open once again to all college staff. So the infrastructure will be open. I'm pleased to say also that the museum opened just over a week ago and has been taking quite significant numbers, certainly up to 100 visitors each day over the last few days, which is great for Edinburgh and great for the college and great for the museum. The hotel, Ten Hill Place, who many of you who may have stayed, is also open for business with fantastic offers to kickstart the great fine dining that happens there for members and fellows, both in the United Kingdom but also internationally. And I hope that soon all our international members and fellows will be able to visit Edinburgh once again. The pandemic has presented all of us with enormous challenges, and there's been terrible sadnesses and considerable stress in working lives and deep anxieties about the future. And whilst the UK is improving from a lockdown point of view, and the numbers of cases and mortalities are decreasing, we know that that is not the case in many places around the world. And we are thinking of all of you at this difficult time. So I am going to hand over now to Pala Rajesh, who will chair this august body of panelists today. We have Sai Vittal, an ex-council member of the college, an endocrine surgeon from Chennai. We have Rose Jarvis from the Academy of the Medical Royal Colleges, who's been instrumental in delivering an extended stay for our MTI candidates. We have Stuart Clark, who's our chair of the International Postgraduate Deanery, and we have Tim Graham, member of council, chair of COPS, postgraduate surgical schools, and consultant cardiothoracic surgeon. And so Raj, I'm going to hand over to you to keep all of these talents in check for the International Assessment and Examination webinar. Over to you. You're mute.
Thank you very much, Mike. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for participating in the webinar today on international education and assessment. The college is extremely mindful of the needs of our international members, fellows, affiliates, and postgraduate students. And it's my great pleasure in introducing the panelists today, who I am sure will be in a position to answer most of your questions. Now, at the outset, I would like all the participants to please put your questions into the chat box, which you will find at the bottom of your screens, where it says participants, chat, and share screen, and Q&A. This will help us to sometimes answer your questions if it's repetitive during the session by any one of the panelists, or we can take it up. If there are any excess questions, we will try and answer them and put it in our YouTube channel. So, to begin, I would request Stuart Clark, who is the Dean of the International Postgraduate Deanery, to inform the gathering as to what the role of the International Postgraduate Deanery is. This will be followed by Rose Jarvis, who is our Academy of Medical Royal College's representative this evening on the webinar, and who's very involved with the MTI, the training initiative. We will then follow on to Sai Vittal, who is the RSA, the International Surgical Advisor in Chennai, India, who has the experience of running several international examinations for MRCS, and he will give you an update on the status of the examinations, the tips and tricks, and the courses that have been run thus far. We will then conclude with Tim Graham, my colleague from Birmingham, who is the chairman of the Professional Standards Committee at the college and a council member. He will update you on the current status with the college's accreditation activities and the ongoing short life working group for credentialing. So thank you very much. Stuart, may I request you to kickstart the evening's program?
Thank you, Pala. Yes, over the course of the next 5 or 10 minutes or so, I'm going to give an overview of the International Postgraduate Deanery, its role and what we've achieved so far in the 1 year that it's been up and running. A little bit about our role, as I say, and induction and the quality assurance that's involved in the Deanery. The Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh have been involved in training young surgeons for over 25 years, and during various different titles over the period of time, more than 1,000 young surgeons have been trained and taken the skills that they have found in the UK back to their home countries. The International Postgraduate Deanery has been a refinement of the courses that we were running up until 2019, and it commenced in May 2019 as an entity in itself. Since then, we've been able to place trainees in all of the 10 surgical specialties. Not unsurprisingly, trauma and orthopedics have been the biggest specialties involved, but there's also a significant component there from urology. The training that's provided can be to the younger or more junior trainees, where it's more broad, but there can be significant subspecialist areas of training, such as transplant surgery or robotics or the various forms of specialist orthopedic surgery. And it is truly international. We've had 32 countries represented, as you can see, predominantly from India and Australia, but the Americas are well represented, as is the Middle East, and as is Africa and the Far East. In terms of the inquiries and applications that we've had, obviously very variable from month to month, and slightly tailed off, obviously, since COVID in March of this year and the lockdown that's been in the UK. In March, we had 45 inquiries, and after the dip during April and May, where there were 15 and 18 inquiries, we're back to 35 inquiries in June. So we're back more now towards a pre-COVID level of interested applicants applying to the UK and thinking about coming here for their training. In terms of the Deanery, a UK surgical trainee will go through a national interview selection process, a post in a geographical region, and employed by a trust. And by a trust, what I'm meaning there, as far as surgical trainees are concerned, is a single hospital or a group of hospitals. A UK trainee will have training within the trust and being employed within the trust, and it's the local deanery in that region that oversees the training. In the International Postgraduate Deanery, there's an application and interview and a post in a trust. Now that's likely to be an individual hospital. You will be employed within that trust. So the trust is thereby responsible for all employment components of the trainee's stay in the UK. So that will be things like annual leave, clinical governance, sick leave. So that's no different from what a UK trainee would expect. The training again will be within the trust, within accredited trainers, and the International Postgraduate Deanery will oversee the training just as the local deanery does to UK trainees. So there's actually no formal connection between the local deanery and the International Postgraduate Deanery, although sometimes the international trainee may be invited along to some of the deanery training days and like, but the college will fulfill the role that the local deanery undertakes for a UK trainee. There's quality assurance within the deanery structure, and that will be identical regardless of where the trainee is coming from, the specialty that they've been in, or how they were appointed. There's an induction to NHS and UK practice, and I'll touch upon that a little bit more later on, because that is important for the trainee as much as the clinical side of things. At the end of it all, you'll be entitled to have the membership of the International Postgraduate Deanery post-nominals, and you'll be invited along to a diploma day to receive those. So the trainee, to be eligible, must not be a resident or in receipt of anything in terms of the UK or the EU. They must hold an acceptable undergraduate qualification. The GMC has a list of those acceptable qualifications. Their postgraduate qualification must be equivalent to an MRCS. And by that, I mean that there must be a clinical examination component within that postgraduate qualification. They must be able to communicate in the English language, and that therefore means an IELTS of 7.5 as an average, or above 7 in all the components. The alternative is an OET level B or greater. They must be in clinical practice for the last 12 months, as well as 3 of the last 5 years. Therefore, before you arrive, the Deanery will sponsor you for the GMC registration. We will support you with your visa application. You will get access to the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh affiliate network, and you'll get assistance to access to banking within the UK. Induction is important, and since the Deanery started, we've had 2, and they were in January and August, and it was held in the Birmingham Centre of the Edinburgh College of Surgeons. Attendance is mandatory, and it lasts 3 days. However, the duration of attendance will depend upon how long the trainee has been in the UK, because some of the induction components may be duplicated within what we provide. The purpose of this induction is to support you in adapting to a new learning environment, because becoming familiar with the UK training structure, becoming familiar with GMC, becoming familiar with consent, those are all important things for an international trainee. The problems that overseas trainees will encounter are rarely clinical. It's much more in relation to the culture of the NHS that there might be issues, or the flattening of the hierarchical structure that there is within the surgical teams now in the UK. It's also an opportunity for the surgical trainees to meet the Deanery team, and also to meet colleagues, either from your own country or in the same surgical specialty, or even in the local geographic region that you can meet with and share issues in terms of how you're performing during the course of your stay. This comes from the BMJ, British Medical Journal of last year, and it highlights that the poor induction is blamed for high GMC referral. And as I say, that is rarely for clinical situations. It's much more adapting to the culture, and that's why we believe an induction is important. In terms of the quality assurance, a trainee will sign up to the Intercollegiate Curriculum Surgical Programme. That is something that UK trainers are very familiar with. You will sign a learning agreement and an educational contract. That is a trainee's statement of what he or she would want from that training that they're going to receive. And the trainer can be held to account with that contract if he fails to deliver upon that. Equally, a trainer can say that we can deliver on this, we can deliver on that, and it's very much having an understanding of what can be achieved, what's practical, and what's appropriate during your time as a trainee. In addition to that, obviously, there's a declaration of health and probity, and the trainer will also sign the educational contract that will then be submitted to the deanery team. There will be reviews of your progress during the course of those 12 to 24 months. Ideally, we would want the training stint to last 2 years. But if it's for 1 year, there'll be a midpoint review at 6 months. If it's for 2 years, it'll be 18 and 16 months with a final review at the end of it all, where the logbook will be looked at. There'll be a questionnaire. There'll be a review of the statements from the trainer. And it's an opportunity to say from you as a trainee what you achieved, and also to comment upon how you felt the training was at that, within that unit, within that trust. As I've mentioned, the interim and final reports will be reviewed by myself or the specialty leads, and then you'll be asked if you would like to attend a diploma day in the Royal College of Surgeons, where the president or the vice president will hand out the diploma, and you'll be entitled to MIPD Ed. During the course of COVID, what's changed? Well, like the college, the deanery has remained open virtually. We have still been accepting and processing applications, and it's also been important that we've remained open virtually because there are trainees in this country. There are trainees who are from abroad that have lived through COVID within the NHS. They may have been deployed. Their training may have been modified, obviously, during the course of the period whilst lockdown and the pressures being on the NHS. We have worked with our colleagues, such as Rose, who you'll hear from later on, in relation to visa extensions, and we've supported all extensions to all training posts for up to 12 months. Our aim is to ensure that every trainee has the option to fulfill their original training goals, regardless of how long their training has been interrupted for. How to apply? There's the email address, sponsorship at the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh.ac.uk. There are 2 training posts or 2 training routes. One, if you found a post that you wish to apply, that you're already been interviewed for, or if you haven't and you're looking for a post within the UK, the Royal College of Surgeons would help you find such a post. You submit a copy of your CV and an operative summary, and the deanery team will reply with a full application pack. There is a one-off fee. That's the deanery. As I said, the deanery has remained open throughout COVID, and so from that point of view, the whole team, Jeannie, Suki, Fozia and Leslie, who've all helped me in terms of providing this talk, as well as keeping the deanery up and running throughout this period of time, deserve all the credit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stuart, for a concise presentation of what the IPD is currently offering to the international medical graduates. And I take your point about our collaboration with the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges. And now I would request Rose to inform us as to how the medical training initiative and the sponsorship COS application process is currently carried out by the Academy. Thank you, Rose, for coming and speaking to us today.
You're welcome. Thank you, Pala, and good evening, everyone. I must start with just a brief apology. Sophie Slavin, whose name you'll see there, my colleague, was going to be part of this webinar, but unfortunately had a family emergency last night and so can't join. So I'm going to go through these slides to tell you about the Medical Training Initiative. We're very proud of the scheme at the Academy, and the first thing I want to say about it is that it's got a philanthropic aim. It's slightly different from some of the other routes into training that Stuart has just talked about. And the intention is that there's a small number of doctors who can come from overseas for a maximum of 2 years to learn from consultants in this country, to learn about the NHS, to increase their skills and their knowledge, and then specifically take them back to their home countries, and with the intention of improving the healthcare systems in other countries around the world as well. And so this is a particular Tier 5 visa. It's very different from the Tier 2, where you can come with the intention of staying in this country for longer. And that's one of the really exciting things about this, this scheme. So if we could have the next slide, please, as I'm not risking sharing my screen. So as I've said, it is this national scheme. It's aimed at DFID countries and lower middle income countries primarily. We do accept applications from other countries as well. We tend to prioritise those first three first, and if there's spaces left at the end of each month, then we will process the other applications from other countries in the world. The Academy is the national scheme sponsor for the United Kingdom Visa and Immigration Department of the Home Office, and we run this scheme on their behalf. Excuse me. And we grant a certificate of sponsorship, which then enables overseas doctors to obtain a Tier 5 visa. Next slide, please. There's quite a few other parties involved in this scheme. As you know, you would need full GMC registration to practice in this country, and so one of the most important things that has to be done is to obtain that. And so there are approved GMC sponsors who help doctors come into the country on the scheme to get their registration. They're generally the medical royal colleges like the RCS Ed or trusts. The colleges themselves run these sponsorship schemes and do a lot to make the MTI schemes happen. They maintain oversight of the participants once they are in this country and working, and they provide the professional and ongoing support in the way that Stuart has just outlined on the scheme he was talking about. Deaneries or local education and training bodies, boards, depending on which part of the country you come to, have a very important role, and that is to make sure that the level of training available to doctors coming in on the scheme is adequate and that they get the full support that they need for the up to 2 years they're here. And also to ensure that those places don't disadvantage UK trainees, because obviously we have to have a balance. And then the NHS trusts are the ones who identify the potential placements and sometimes the candidates themselves that they want to put into that role. They are the ones who are responsible for the interviews and selecting the candidates and making sure that the performance monitoring carries on when they are in post. Thank you, Ryan. Next slide. And then there's 4 steps or 4 phases in the scheme, really. And each of those players has their own role, and hopefully it all comes together at the end and works really smoothly. So the doctors approach a trust or the deanery to find a placement if that's what they'd like to do. The trusts can identify the posts and the individuals if they have someone in mind. The colleges assess them, and then, as I've said, the deanery has that very important role of making sure that there is adequate capacity. Next slide, Ryan. That's a bit small, sorry. You then have to apply for the visa, and that the doctor does by meeting the college and the employing trust requirements and the GMC registration that I mentioned a while ago. The trust interviews and then completes the paperwork and sends the application and all the relevant documentation to the college or straight to us at the Academy. The college provides the professional sponsorship and support and completes the rest of the paperwork. The deanery we've covered already. The GMC then review that application and determine whether or not to grant the registration, and that is subject to attending an ID check, which has been a challenge in COVID, as you will imagine. And then our role finally is to issue that certificate of sponsorship to enable the doctor to get the Tier 5 visa. Thank you, Ryan. the placement then happens. The doctor must obviously meet all the GMC requirements and the requirements of his or her sponsor and employer. The college maintains the support as appropriate for them, and the trust makes sure the training and the pastoral care is given as appropriate. And the next slide is the final bit of the package. The placements can be a minimum of 6 months and a maximum of 2 years. Once that is over, the main thing is that the doctor then goes back to their home country to share that knowledge, so that the scheme has 3 good outcomes: that the doctor comes over and gets knowledge of a UK health and care system and is able to take that back. We benefit from doctors coming from other parts of the world, and we learn from the way they see things. And then the home country for the doctor benefits from that knowledge and sharing that the doctor takes back with them. So at the end of that placement, that's what happens. The trust has to do a bit more paperwork, and the college provides an acknowledgement of the completion of training. And then we have to fulfil our obligations to the UKBI to tell them that the placement has ended and the doctor has returned to their home country. That's all the slides I had, but just briefly to talk about timescales. We aim to do the DFID and lower middle income country applications within 2 weeks, and the other applicants from other areas we do when we have certificates of sponsorship left over at the end of the month. The COVID-19 crisis has obviously impacted the scheme, but we have made sure that it stays open, just as the college has made sure their scheme stays open. And there have been some changes. There have been the difficulties, obviously, with the ID check with the GMC and some of the English language tests, the IELTS. Some of the visa demands of the UKBI have been relaxed a little bit. And as Mike alluded to at the outset, the UKBI granted an automatic extension for a specific subset of MTI doctors whose visas ran out at the end of September this year. But following Mike and Pala's suggestion, we contacted the Home Office and said, well, all the MTI doctors have had their training significantly interrupted by this pandemic, so please would you extend that to cover them all? And we heard last week that they have in fact done that, so that's really good news and we're very pleased about that. And there was one other thing and it's just escaped me. But I'll end on the high note of gaining the 1 year extension and leave it there and come back to any questions later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rose. I'm sure there'll be questions from the participants. I will smoothly carry on to Sai Vittal, who is our International Specialist Advisor and the Convener of Examinations in Chennai, India, who will appraise us as to what the current situation is in Chennai and the anxiety of a lot of the participants about forthcoming examinations outside of the United Kingdom. Thank you, Sai.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, and a good evening to all of my colleagues in the UK. It's sort of nearly midnight or just about midnight here, so good morning to all the participants from South Asia and the ASEAN countries. I'm delighted to be one of the panelists here and share my views about MRCS OSCE exams, especially from an international perspective. Right, just a few words of introduction. The Edinburgh College conducts the Part B MRCS OSCE exams at various centers throughout the world. Apart from India, they conduct the exams in Kuala Lumpur and Kuching in Malaysia, Singapore, Yangon in Myanmar, Muscat in Oman, Malta, Khartoum in Sudan, and the latest entrant has been Islamabad. Unfortunately, Islamabad, the first diet was scheduled to be conducted in April 2020 and had to be unfortunately postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Coming to centers in India, one of the oldest centers which has got a long history of association with the Edinburgh College is Chennai. I hail from Chennai, and Chennai has been associated with the Edinburgh College exams since the late 90s. The first FRCS Part B examination was held simultaneously in Chennai and Mumbai in the year 1998. Subsequently, Chennai continued to host the MRCS exams, initially the old format, and now continues to host the MRCS OSCE exams on an annual basis. What are the other centers in India which host the exams? You have Delhi, Calcutta, Hyderabad, and the latest entrant into the list is Kozhikode, otherwise called Calicut, from the state of Kerala. In each of these diets, we find that there are at least about 80 candidates, if not more, applying for the MRCS OSCE exams in India of late. So which means we have enough candidates to run a full 2-day cycle. And this has prompted the college to explore whether we can open new venues of examination in India. Is MRCS essential for career progression from an international perspective? I'm sure all of you agree that for a UK trainee, an MRCS is essential both for progression in training and career progression. However, in India and other countries, it's not really essential. Let me explain. For instance, if you take India, you have what is called the postgraduate degrees called MS in the broad specialty of surgery, which is given out by different universities, and an equivalent exam called the National Board, which is accredited to the equivalent exam, called a DNB, which is accredited to the National Board of Exams. So this is usually a 3-year course, and for those candidates who would like to subspecialize or super specialize, however you call it, then you have an additional course called the MCH, which is given once again given by different universities, or the equivalent DNB, which is accredited to the National Board of Exams. I'm sure other countries in South Asia as well as in ASEAN countries have the local degrees as well. So if MRCS is not essential for career progression, if it's just an optional degree, then why do many people take MRCS? This is an answer which I got the feedback from many trainees, and it's primarily from an Indian perspective, but I'm sure many of the Middle East as well as the South Asian and the ASEAN countries would have similar views as well. One of the main reasons is it's regarded as a standardized and quality assured exam. When I mean standardized, wherever you take the exam, whether you take the MRCS in India or the ASEAN countries or the Middle East, or the MRCS from the UK, they are of the same and equivalent standard. And when I mean quality assured, everybody is aware that an examiner, before being inducted, has to undergo a training course, has to observe the exam, and only then is he allowed to exam. And even if he has started examining, he is being assessed periodically. The MRCS is considered as an international benchmark. The feedback from some of the trainees which I got is, they feel that in the MRCS, you have a healthy mix of local examiners as well as international examiners. And once they are successful in such exam, they have a sense of satisfaction. And of course, many of the trainees and younger colleagues from India would like to train and work in the UK, and with Brexit being a reality now, they see a huge opportunity now. And apart from UK, they would like to go to the Middle East and other countries as well. And these post-nominals MRCS, they think gives them an added edge. Finally, if you take a country like India, where nearly 60 to 70% of the health burden is taken care by the private sector, and these post-nominals, MRCS, is held in high esteem among the public. So many of the surgeons feel having the post-nominals would perhaps enhance their practice as well. So, okay, why do people choose the RCS Ed and why is it so popular here? Because of diversity. We all know that 40% of members and fellows of the Edinburgh College reside outside the UK. It's known for its equality. If not, I wouldn't be speaking from nearly 6,000 miles away from Edinburgh. And there's always a sense of inclusion and belonging, and no wonder it's widely regarded as the most friendly college. Coming to the exams in India, which have been scheduled this year, Delhi, Chennai, Calcutta, and Kozhikode were the 4 centers where the Edinburgh College was scheduled to conduct the exams in 2020. Delhi was slotted for the second half of March. Unfortunately, few days before the exam had to be cancelled because that was the time when the WHO declared the COVID-19 as a pandemic. The next exam was scheduled to be in Chennai, and it's a strange coincidence that the exams were slotted for July 27th and July 28th, that is today and tomorrow. The president, the vice president, and a large team of examiners were supposed to come over to Chennai, not only to examine, but to take part in an interactive forum of members and fellows of the Edinburgh College, and that also stands cancelled. The exams in Calcutta are scheduled for September, and the exams in Calicut are scheduled for December. Although they are still listed in the website, going by the numbers in India, I think it's highly unlikely that we may be able to run these exams this year. Then you might ask me, why are they still advertised in the website? That is for the trainees to register the interest. What happens once you register your interest, then the college can guarantee your priority, which means if you opted for Calcutta or Calicut or for any other center, as and when the exams recommence, you will be given priority over candidates who have not yet applied. Coming to exams in other centers which were scheduled to take place this year, in January, I think the exams were held in Yangon and KL. The exams in Singapore and Kuching, which were scheduled to be held in August, have been cancelled. The exams in Malta and Muscat are scheduled to be held in November. They're still advertised in the website, but it's going to be increasingly difficult, I think. It all depends upon the Foreign Office regulations of the United Kingdom, as well as the local government regulations, whether it would actually take place. But the college is trying its best to see whether it can hold, but seems to be highly unlikely. So what are the challenges which we face? What are the challenges that the college face? The college is quite keen to recommence exams. I'm sure many of you know that the Part A exam is open globally on September the 15th, and the Part B MRCS exams is going to be held in the UK from October. But the college is keen to recommence the exams internationally as well. However, it all depends upon when the pandemic subsides. Of course, there's a fear and anxiety of a second wave, and so it's very difficult to give an exact timeline. And this is compounded by the fact that different countries have different rules. When I mean different rules, you have different rules of entry, different rules of quarantine, and lockdown varies in different regions in the same country. So it's very difficult for the college, for the time being, to actually give an exact timeline. So what are the challenges which are faced by the candidates and the trainees? The candidates are not able to plan managing uncertainty is quite stressful during this pandemic. Especially if you take India, there are many candidates who not only take the MRCS exam, they also take the local exam. And so they're not able to sort of exactly plan the way forward. And in addition, many of these trainees are frontline workers involved in the management of COVID-19, and there's a fear and anxiety whether they will fall ill. And of course, there's also the anxiety whether they'll be given adequate time off for preparation as well. And this especially holds good for the Part A exams, which is going to be held next month. So what are the few tips which I would like to give to the younger colleagues? Please stay safe. Charity begins at home. Please take care of yourself first and then others. Remain focused and stay positive. It's a difficult thing, especially with all the negativity surrounding us. It's easier said than done. Please register your interest with the college. If you're interested in a particular diet, please register your interest. As I said earlier, this would guarantee your priority. In addition, the college would know that the number of people who are interested in a particular diet, and as and when the college recommences exams internationally, you never know. We might even have back-to-back exams, or they might even increase the duration of days. So kindly register your interest. Please keep yourself up to date with all the college activities, either via the college website, or if you're a social media buff, via the college Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, whichever you're familiar. I can assure you that the college is doing its best to minimize the impact of COVID-19, especially with regard to training and career progression of trainees. A few tips regarding the MRCS exam. I would like to tell you that the MRCS is a comprehensively fair exam. The examiners are not there to fail you. As I said, it's a quality assured exam. There are no such thing called killer stations or veto stations. Just because you've done one or two stations badly, it doesn't mean that you're going to fail the exam. Please don't do a post-mortem of each bay. Just carry on forgetting your performance in your previous bay. Plan and be adequately prepared. I'm reminded of an old saying, failing to plan is planning to fail. Discuss with colleagues and peers, especially those who are going to take the exam along with you. Catch hold of a mentor who can sort of navigate you through the troubled waters. You must be aware that the college runs preparatory courses for MRCS exams at many international centers. This usually occurs 3 to 4 months prior to exam. Of course, because of the pandemic, they have been suspended temporarily. But the good news is that the college has piloted a remote online Part B MRCS OSCE preparatory course in the UK, and a remote online course just took place yesterday and day before in Malta. So you never know, we might soon have a remote online course either in the SAARC, ASEAN region, or the Middle East quite soon. So please watch this space. And before I end, a word of advice to all my younger colleagues, especially those taking the exam: success is the sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out. So if you're persistent in your efforts, I can guarantee that you'll be successful. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much, Sai. That has been comprehensive, and I'm sure a lot of the participants will take on board your tips, mainly for the international exams. I will now pass on to Tim, who is going to talk about quality standards, especially in relation to the international examinations and accreditation of hospitals and centers to run the examinations and to run the courses. Thank you very much, Tim.
So thank you very much, Raj, and thank you, Sai, for that comprehensive view from India. Clearly, quality standards in relation to exams and accreditation is a large topic. I'm just going to touch on some things which we feel are particularly relevant for our international colleagues. And good evening, good night, and good morning to all of you. Various time zones around the world. I'm aware that some of you have got up very early in the morning. So thank you very much for tuning in. So next slide, please. So the Edinburgh College has got a substantial portfolio of both surgical and dental examinations. And the delivery of these has been considerably disrupted with the COVID pandemic. However, it's been agreed within the college that we really need to stick to some basic principles. And that is that through examination and assessment, we must maintain patient safety. We should try to minimally disadvantage the candidates, but we cannot send the COVID pandemic away, and there's disadvantage to some extent to everybody. But very importantly, from the college perspective, we must maintain the standard of the examinations. We don't want any COVID qualifications that are maybe not felt to be to the same standard as the usual examination. So this clearly presents a challenge. There was an extensive webinar last Monday, which covered both the MRCS and the FRCS examinations, and I would recommend you to review the video from last week. The examinations from the MRCS perspective were presented by the ICBSE chair, that's the Intercollegiate Board for Surgical Examinations, and just some real snapshots from that. The Part A MRCS is going to be delivered online, initially within the UK in November, and this has been a considerable IT challenge. And then the Part A's will be held online overseas, really predicated on how the UK experience goes with the online examination. There are clearly areas of the world which may have issues in relation to IT access, and the college will look at these on a case-by-case basis, and it may be, of course, that paper examinations may need to run in some of these countries. In terms of the Part B examination, again, it's planned that this will run domestically from the end of the year onwards. It's been modified down to 13 stations without direct patient or active contact. It's felt that we will be able to maintain the standard examination, and as you will recall, I've said that that's absolutely paramount. How then the Part B MRCS examination, Edinburgh examination, is rolled out overseas will again be dependent on how this examination fares within the UK, and also clearly on the course of COVID around the world. Next slide, please. In relation to examinations, last week, the JSF Joint Colleges examinations. However, with colleagues in Hong Kong, Singapore, and Malaysia, in 8 specialties, the Edinburgh College hosts an examination which awards the FRCS. And it's clear that the FRCS is an international standard qualification, internationally recognised, and the college hold the award of this qualification, the FRCS, in very high stead. It's clear to us at the minute that because of the unreliability, particularly of IT, and to some extent time zones around the world, that the college will not be able to participate directly in the examination of candidates remotely, that is, asking them questions. However, for the next diet of these joint examinations in the Far East, we've agreed that there should be some key elements in order to maintain the standard. Eligible candidates will need evidence of workplace-based assessments and satisfactory education supervisor reports. These are usually available because candidates in the Far East are being trained in RCS Ed accredited training programs, and more of that later. There's been a move towards making sure that there's a written paper across the breadth of the specialty in all the specialties, but consideration will be given in the short term to considering other evidence. There won't be clinical examinations, but clinical skills, knowledge, situational awareness, critical judgment assessment will be made through vivas, which include clinical scenarios. And the college feel it's very important to have a test or evidence of general professional skills and communication. It's really important from a college perspective that surgeons are also good doctors and have good professional skills. Importantly, however, the college are insistent that there will be quality assurance in part provided by the College of Surgeons. Next slide, please. And this quality assurance for this round of FRCS examinations is going to take several parts. One will be the remote observation by video conferencing of the exam by Edinburgh College assessors, actually based within or sat within the college. There'll be participation of this group of external observers in examiners' briefings and the final meeting. And importantly, we're going to ask local senior Edinburgh fellows, these are local fellows who are on the ground in the Far East, in the different countries, who will be cross-specialty to actually directly observe the examination. So be at the coalface, be at the point of delivery of these examinations. And this will, the quality assurance will take both a qualitative and a quantitative form. The qualitative form will be, for example, observing examiner behaviour, question content, the marking, and the use of what we call marking descriptors. And the quantitative assurance will be a review by psychometric analysis of the marks awarded by all the examiners overseas to check that they are working within an appropriate framework. Next slide, please. If I can just now briefly move on to our college accreditation activities. This is a largely hidden and taken for granted activity within the college, largely held within the education department. And there's a large amount of accreditation activity, both related to surgical and dental activity. And the college's accreditation activity has the potential to impact across the breadth of members and fellows' professional lives. So, for example, the college can be asked to accredit personal CPD courses, academic training programs, all the way through even to national training programs in different surgical subspecialties. This is a large volume of activity. For example, in the last calendar year, there were over 200 applications to the education department for different activities, courses, etc., to be considered for college activity. And as I say, this has previously largely been taken for granted. It has been to some extent a rather uncoordinated activity within the college and has grown as the years have gone by, and we've been asked to look at different kinds of academic training and educational activity. And this activity for accreditation needs to be coordinated between the different college departments, for example, with the exams department. And as a consequence of this, over the last 6 to 8 months, there's been a review of the college accreditation activity and standards, which in part impact on the international activity of the college. Next slide, please. So in terms of what the college have done, there's been a short life working group which has looked at accreditation for both surgical and dental activities. This short life working group has identified essentially 6 different streams. I'll deal with the first one. One area of accreditation is where the college accredits activities which contribute to personal CPD. And in the UK, for example, we collect evidence of CPD activity, and it feeds into our annual appraisal process. We're hoping and anticipating that in due course, the college business transformation project will help us be able to deliver this for individual fellows and members, including those overseas. And there is the potential for an app to be developed, which is being considered by the business transformation project at this time. The 5 principal streams, though, that the Short Life Working Group has been looking at has been academic teaching programs, international training programs, again, both surgical and dental, particularly relevant to this evening's audience. What we would call short courses, these are courses that occur over 1, 2, maybe 3 days. Educational centres, and also clinical fellowships. I would say at this point, however, that the accreditation of clinical fellowships falls within the college's International Postgraduate Deanery, led by the Dean, Stuart Clark. Within the UK, clinical fellowships, where UK trainees go to a centre to undertake a fellowship, those are being looked at separately from the International Postgraduate Deanery. In looking at these 5 activities, the Short Life Working Group has considered 8 domains in terms of trying to determine whether accreditation should be awarded or not. These are the purpose and outcome of the activity, structure and content, how the activity is assessed, relevant information in relation to the participants or trainees, similarly for the faculty that will be delivering the education, details of the learning environment, which we think is very important, the governance of this activity, and also how the activity will be evaluated. This has been quite a large piece of work, as for the domains and these streams, we've benchmarked this activity against our GMC and General Dental Council standards, also international WFME standards, and also we've identified as a college some particular priorities which we feel need to be met for the valuable accreditation from the Edinburgh College. And also we've looked at both online and face-to-face type educational activities, and also developed these standards so that they can apply to commercial and non-commercial activity. Of real interest is that the dental faculty have, together with us, developed a tier system of the accreditation of national and international training programs and have ranked them from tier 1 through to tier 4, where tier 4 would be the equivalent of a UK university which can award the membership dental qualification. And this is with the aim of facilitating the development and helping with international training programs in dentistry. Thank you very much for listening. Happy to take any questions through the Q&A box. And I'm sorry that was a bit of a romp through, but as you can see, quite a lot of activity occurring within the college in relation to our international membership fellowship. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tim, for keeping us updated about what the college's activity is to make sure that international education and assessment is completely standardized, as Sai alluded to. I see that we have answered a lot of the questions in the chat box as we went along, but we still have a few questions here. Nigel Robb, who has sent these questions from, I think he's from Australia, he says, is there going to be remote observation? If there is going to be remote observation, why can't there be participation in the assessment? Stuart? Please unmute, Stuart.
Yes, sorry, I missed that.
I can answer that one, Raj, if you like.
Yes, okay.
So Nigel, thank you for the question. We thought about this quite a lot, really, and have sort of juggled with the idea of participating in the assessment by asking questions from Edinburgh, so some sort of remote proctoring. To be honest, we cannot be confident of the IT and the links, and this comes back to that basic principle of not disadvantaging the candidates, but trying to maintain the standard. We feel that what we're promoting or advocating in terms of the quality assurance, that'll be a mixture of both remote observation from Edinburgh, participation in the examining meetings at the beginning and the end of the process, but also by having senior local Edinburgh fellows on the ground who we've worked with in other specialties to provide some cross-specialty, coal-face quality assurance. We feel that that's the best way and most reliable way in order to be able to both deliver the examination, but also maintain the standard quality assurance and reassure the candidates. We can't have any candidates failing because the IT or the process has failed. But thank you for your question.
There is another question saying, is there an example of international center accredited by RCS Ed? And I'd like to say that the whole of the national training program in cardiothoracic surgery in Malaysia has been accredited and monitored. Has been monitored. I see that Stuart Clark was going to answer this question live. So Stuart, would you like to take that question on as well?
I was actually answering on behalf of you. I thought you were going to answer that one.
Shekhar, are you happy with the answer? You can type it on if you wish. I'd like to ask another question to Sai. Sai, the National Board of Examinations in Delhi are planning to run remote examinations across the country. So would it be possible to see how they do it so that we can learn from it? Because Pavanendra Lal, I think, is involved with it, and see if we can do something similar with the clinical side of the examinations. I heard in the JSCM that we have some built-in IT technology which can detect by artificial intelligence if anybody is trying to do any mischievous behavior during the online examinations. And that was extremely interesting for me to take on board. I learned something at that time. So, if we can get some feedback from you regarding that, it'll be most helpful for the participants who are listening here.
Yeah. I think at some point in time, I would like to discuss this issue on behalf of the college with Professor Pavanendra Lal and see what he has to offer. In the same vein, I would like to say that the Indian Association of Gastroendosurgeons, called IAGS, has actually scheduled laparoscopic courses, endoscopic courses online. In fact, the very same organization is having a joint meeting with the Edinburgh College in sometime at mid-October, and I think Pavanendra Lal is involved. And I think the IT systems in India are quite robust enough so that if and when you have the exams in the UK, and if they have been successful, then given a scenario, if it's not possible to have a face-to-face exam, then we are left with no other opportunity. Perhaps a remote online exam is the way forward.
Thank you very much. Question to Rose, because I've just seen this in the chat box. Rose, if a candidate has been compromised for greater than 4 to 5 months during the COVID pandemic in the UK, how long would he or she be able to stay in the UK now that we've got an MTI visa extension? Is this for the time frame that he or she were compromised, or is this for an additional year? That's been a question which has been asked in the chat box.
Yes, it's for an additional year because we felt that was the best way of covering everybody's interruption to training. We haven't quite finalised with the Home Office how this is going to work. We've initially said anyone in post from the 1st of April this year would have an extra year added on to the end date of their visa. But one of the questions came up from somebody who started in March, which made me think we need to think this through carefully with the Home Office. But it's quite difficult we've got to make a policy that the Home Office are happy with and can put into practice. But the answer to your question is it'll be a year added onto the end of their current visa rather than a proportion at that time.
Thank you. So does this mean that anybody who comes to the UK in the future will have a 3-year visa, or it will be only for 2 years?
No.
This is an interim measure, Rose, for people who are currently in the UK.
Yes, that's right. It is an interim measure, although I have to say that the Secretary of State, we're seeking an increase in the number of certificates of sponsorship we have from the current 1,000 a year to 3,000 a year. And we are told by DHSC, the Department of Health and Social Security, that a letter has gone from the Secretary of State to the Home Office asking for that to be granted, and also for a lengthening of the MTI period. So at the moment it's an interim measure, but it might be right. A lengthening in due course.
Thank you. I mean, I think that if the participants are listening in carefully, that is something which you need to watch out for, because if this is lengthened and if there are more number of visas granted, then obviously it's a case of finding more trusts and hospitals which are accredited for training in the UK. Because one of my concerns when we started the International Postgraduate Deanery was that the international medical graduates who came to the United Kingdom fed back saying that they were used as a pair of hands. And I think that is something that we cannot allow to happen to some of these people who come for specific reasons. And therefore, we introduced the quality assurance, both for the trainee and for the trainers, so that we will have a close monitoring system for the overseas and international medical graduates who are here for the time that they had spent usefully. Stuart, would you like to say anything about the quality assurance process that we introduced recently with the IPD?
Yes, as I sort of touched upon briefly in my talk there are obviously the trainers in the UK are trainers who are very familiar with the process through the UK graduates. There are specialty leads in each specialty who obviously also have been trainers and have been involved in their specialty associations, or people who have been fellows of the college for quite a while, and they've been appointed through the specialty boards within the college. So there's quite a senior team available to supervise the educational agreements and the learning agreements that have been, as well as to respond to the administrative teams. Suki and Leslie and Jeannie and Fozia are all available for any inquiries and queries that may be more administrative in relation to their time. So yes, there's quite a strong component there that so far, to be honest, hasn't had to be called upon as much because a lot of people are only comparatively a short period of time into their training since the IPD came about in May last year.
Thank you. Thank you very much for clarifying that. I have a question here from an anonymous attendee. Question to Mr. Vittal and Mr. Rajesh. It is great that so many international aspiring surgeons wish to become the FRCS. However, with India being such a vast country with a huge volume of cases and no restrictions, such as the European working regulations, why doesn't India create its own Royal College? Question number one for Sai. here you go, Sai, you've got a huge, aspiration in front of you. And two, should we instead be looking to arrange UK trainees to go to India for added training? And I think that's something that we would love to do. I'm sure Tim will grab that by the scruff of its neck. But what Tim would like is to make sure that the trainee who's sent to India is actually trained. And we've spent half our lifetimes, Tim and I, to make sure that that happens between an exchange in Malaysia. We've had Malaysian graduates come over to the UK to train in cardiothoracic surgery, and we have sent one back. Really, he has had a fairly pleasant experience. So this is something which Angus Watson is also trying to introduce from the college with the remote and rural healthcare. So I think there is a view that this exchange can happen in the near future. Tim, would you like to come in on that?
Yeah, I think I would. Yeah, I think I would. If India would like to have a Royal College of Surgeons, can we hang on to Elizabeth and we'll send them Prince Andrew? I think the best thing would be to get the best of both worlds, or the best of both systems. We've got a long-standing history of quality and standards training and education. Absolutely, India has got a vast amount of case volume. Surely the right thing is to try to merge or meld the two to the benefit of as many patients as possible, and to optimize training and teaching the next generation as best we can.
In fact, you very much.
Yeah. In fact, the answer to your second question, there are certain private institutions which actually have exchange of trainees between the institutions in UK and India for a short time training period. It's already going on unofficially from institution to institution rather than through the trust and deanery.
You see, my worry with that, Sai, is the quality assurance. You see, and also, short-term observerships are fine, up to a maximum of 3 months. But if the trusts are involved in the appointments of these candidates, and they come to a particular surgeon, who knows what happens to him? How does that trainee feed back to somebody who is external about how his experience went? So these are the areas that the college, at least, we would be very concerned that the standard shouldn't drop.
That's why you need a person like Tim over here monitoring everything.
Is that an invitation, Sai? I'll come and stay with you.
Yeah, of course, Tim.
I think the UK would be happy to export me, Sai. Okay.
So, Sekhar's question has been answered. He says, what is the option of working with some established organizations in India rather than institutions? I guess that was his question.
I think that, for instance, there have been some arrangements between, because since Sekhar asked this question, I know that there have been exchange program between Christie's and Gangarams, and I think it's working quite well. So if you have an exchange between established institutions, then I think already they are sort of standardized and quality assured. So that might not be a problem, because there are certain centers like Christie's and Gangaram which already have it in vogue.
Sure. Yeah. And I think, with the India-UK healthcare organization, which I attended in Birmingham in February, these are the kind of collaborations which we need to take forward. But what we need to do is to make sure that they are all standardized and the trainee receives what he or she came here for and return home and invest in their institutions. Well, it's 15 minutes past 8 and we've gone past the hour. I'd like to personally thank all the panelists for a invigorating evening, especially Rose. Thank you ever so much for taking your time off to come and participate in our webinar. It'll only go downwards from now with my colleagues on the panel. So thank you very much indeed. It's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from Tim, Stuart, Sai, and Rose. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye.